Welcome to A2Council Update, a recap of the Ann Arbor City Council meeting on February 21st, 2023. My name is Elizabeth Nelson, and I served on Ann Arbor City Council from 2018 to 2022. I understand the inner workings of our local government, and I believe that you should too. This is the voting chart for the council meeting on February 21st, 2023. There were 3 absences: Mayor Taylor, Councilmember Song from Ward 2, and Councilmember Briggs from Ward 5. There was 1 vote of dissent on 1 agenda item. All other items were approved unanimously. You can find this voting chart and more information about this meeting at A2Council.com. This week, City Council considered a very short agenda and held 2 public hearings. After introductory remarks and public comments, Council considered agenda items for about an hour. 12 people signed up in advance to offer public comments. 9 people spoke on topics that were part of the agenda. The consent agenda included 17 items and over $3.7 million of expenditures. 1 item, CA1, was pulled for discussion. Approval of CA1 would permit street closures so that the Monroe Street Fair can take place on Monroe from Tappan to State and Tappan from Monroe to South University. The Monroe Street Fair traditionally coincides with the annual Hash Bash, and this year it is planned for April 1st. 4 people offered public comments in support of the Monroe Street Fair. Local attorney and former vendor Scott Roberts shared history.
The street fair started about 20 years ago to address a very real issue, and that issue was the lack of infrastructure at the Hash Bash. Specifically, restrooms, the ability to wash your hands, cleaning up afterwards, subsidizing the police and fire response. You take away the street fair, those 10,000, 15,000 people are still going to show up to the Hash Bash. I'd rather have them in the streets without cars than in a street with cars.
Lenny Sinclair, ex-wife of poet and political activist John Sinclair, spoke about the connection between the Monroe Street Fair and the Hash Bash.
Please, City Council, don't cancel this culture on us. That is our culture. We've been fighting for it, and now it's legal. And now you want to cancel it? No, please don't. Thank you very much. Okay.
A longtime participant in the Hash Bash explained,
since the Monroe Street Fair has been there, it's added and it's made things safer. It gives the people that are gonna come anyway somewhere to congregate afterwards rather than they're out bothering businesses. It's a really positive environment.
Another commenter shared,
the police are very friendly and really don't have anything to do besides watch all of us. So I don't believe the conflict of this football game in April in the mud is going to be a conflict with this problem that we're having here. These
commenters were responding to written communication from the city's fire and police departments, which was published as an attachment to agenda item CA1. Fire Chief Kennedy and Interim Police Chief Metzer urged Council to reject the Monroe Street Fair due to concerns that their departments could not staff 3 public events at once. On April 1st, Ann Arbor will be hosting the Hash Bash, and the University of Michigan will be hosting a spring game with free and open admission.
Last year, we ran into this same alignment of the 3 events with the spring game. Speaking for fire alone, we had 4 incidents specific to this event. And our units from the downtown station, their turnaround time was over an hour for each of these events, which is normally a half-hour call tops, being on scene. This is something that is a very real issue that we deal with on game days, is our ability to get units from Michigan Stadium to the hospital has to go through a downtown network that is less than ideal.
This is the one event that we do have some control over in this city in terms of granting a permit. And so when we get gridlocked downtown, as Chief Kennedy stated, it is nearly impossible to get in. Should we have a large scale event, when everything is congested in one area, we have significant issues.
Council members asked for additional clarification.
Your primary issue is that it delayed your ability to respond to emergencies the last time this happened, last year. Is that the case?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And so is it just the closure of this block? Can you help me understand how the closure of this block delayed response times last year. It is, yeah, this is a really tough one for me.
Then either we figure out how to deploy emergency personnel through the air, or we figure out an alternate way of enabling these events.
This is really tough, as I think, you're hearing in the discussion.
City Administrator Dahoney intervened.
If there's an opportunity to find some kind of compromise that we have not yet discovered, if we took a little time to do that, does that cause harm in terms of your planning process?
I think for my staff, we would need about 7 days.
City Council voted unanimously to postpone a decision about the Monroe Street Fair until their March 6th meeting. No one spoke at a public hearing for ordinance amendments that will expand tax exemptions for affordable housing. City Council unanimously approved the ordinance changes without any discussion. No one spoke at a public hearing for ordinance changes that will expand the city's non-discrimination ordinance. The ordinance will now include reference to a government-issued ID, specifically those issued by Washtenaw County. City Council unanimously approved those changes after 4 minutes of discussion. Council then considered a resolution that directs a new beginning to planning and collaboration with the University of Michigan for rehabilitation of the East Medical Center Drive Bridge. This resolution first appeared on the January 23rd Council agenda, when city staff recommended approval of a construction contract to rebuild the East Medical Center Drive Bridge this year. That construction contract was set aside and substituted with the resolution directing more planning and redesign. City staff will have to rebid the project, and bridge improvements are delayed to 2024. Earlier in the meeting, several public commenters spoke on the resolution and traffic issues generally. Former council member Kirk Westfall urged the current city council to push back on staff recommendations and remove traffic lanes. He listed locations at Huron Parkway, Platte Road, Lowertown, and Fuller Road as examples of where car lanes should be removed. Regarding the East Medical Center Drive Bridge, he wondered,
why wasn't staff's first instinct to remove lanes on this bridge or add cycling infrastructure? The traffic volume on the bridge is about half of that of South Main Street, where we removed lanes and saw dramatically reduced speeding.
Another commenter shared personal experience with the bridge.
I ride my bike across that bridge, but nobody else I know does. It's the time to make that choke point welcoming for cyclists, especially those who, unlike me, are too intimidated today to ride across it. Perhaps some of you feel that way. It's 12 minutes to North Campus. Not one of my U of M colleagues that I know of has ever ridden their bike to North Campus. Besides me, I'm sure there are some. They're just not common, at least in the offices I've worked in. I'm frustrated to hear that the plan for it is no dedicated cycling infrastructure.
Commenter Larry Deck spoke on behalf of the Washtenaw Walking and Biking Coalition.
We'd like to see two things on the bridge. Widening the west sidewalk to about 15 feet to make room for bidirectional bike lanes and a pedestrian lane, which would also serve as part of a campus-to-campus bikeway, and building the planned trail loop under the bridge, which would also be a part of that bikeway. Ann Arbor's A2 plan calls for a reduction of vehicle miles traveled by 2030 of 50% in Ann Arbor and a 25% of trips by walking and biking in Ann Arbor. This bridge gives us an opportunity to make progress towards these goals, and an opportunity in one of the parts of town with some of the heaviest bicycle and pedestrian traffic.
Commenter Adam Goodman reiterated,
we are compromising our city's goals and values by allowing a roadway to be widened, which will increase traffic volumes, speeds, and potential conflicts when we have adopted plans and objectives to do the opposite.
He further speculated,
if we had had the current membership of City Council a year ago, it might have saved the city and the university hundreds of thousands of dollars and a year of delay on this project.
Delay and redesign of the East Medical Center Bridge is actually predicted to cost over $2 million. The city has committed to paying an additional $500,000 toward this delay and redesign. In January, when Council first rejected the construction contract for rehabilitation of the East Medical Center Drive Bridge, the substitute resolution for redesign was amended at the table. Councilmember Ackman asked that physical barriers be added between the sidewalks and traffic lanes. In January, city staff had no information as to cost or feasibility, but council approved language requiring such barriers. City staff has since explained why these barriers are untenable. Councilmember Ackman relayed the information from staff.
The cost of installing this barrier on one side next to a sidewalk of 10.5 feet, the width that we want at a minimum, will cost an estimated $1.04 million. From a safety perspective, the barrier is not providing additional safety that is over and above the raised sidewalk and the distance from the lane.
The requirement for barriers was removed from the resolution by friendly amendment without a vote. After an additional 10 minutes of discussion, City Council approved the resolution almost unanimously. Councilmember Cornell was the lone vote of dissent. In response to recent events at MSU, Council unanimously approved a resolution directing the city's lobbyist to advocate for gun safety laws. City ordinances covering firearms include clarification that possession of weapons or firearms in public places shall be governed by state law. In December 2022, City Council approved a 37-page legislative and policy agenda enumerating the city's position on a variety of topics and issues under state and federal jurisdiction. In this agenda, laws related to firearms are mentioned under the broader topic of local control and Ann Arbor's support for local regulation of firearms. Council unanimously approved the resolution directing the city's lobbyists and state representatives to promote gun safety laws. Finally, Council considered tax exemptions or payment in lieu of taxes for a development at 2050 Commerce Drive. That development will include 250 units of housing for families earning up to 80% of average median income. Overall, the project is priced for families earning 60% of average median income. Approval of this tax exemption was dependent on final approval of ordinance changes earlier in the meeting. Councilmember Dish explained.
We, by a previous action, enabled this to be passed, and we will see an addition of 250 affordable housing units, and that is great. And it's an example of something we want to encourage more of, which is the private market to get into this work that we are doing also ourselves.
City Council unanimously approved payment in lieu of taxes for the new development at 2050 Commerce Drive. The meeting officially adjourned at 8:50 p.m. without any additional public comment. For more details about this meeting, visit A2Council.com. Like and subscribe if you want to be alerted to more updates like this one.